An Advanced Psychology of the East, a lecture by Idries Shah delivered in 1977 before a live audience.
Once upon a time, there was a Sufi who possessed a really enormous range of teaching stories and of accounts of the doings and sayings of the classical masters and of the knowledge of how and when these elements were to be applied in the learning situation to provide the real psychological effects which, as you know, otherwise run away into the sand. I'm talking now of our position that teaching materials of a literary sort are less didactic or descriptive than they are instrumental. This is something which I repeat quite a lot because lots of people still don't believe it, as it were. These are designed just as much to provoke thought, action, understanding as they are to entertain or to bewilder even. Now, on the basis of the learning by contact theory, this teacher always allowed a certain number of his less able pupils to attend his seminar. So normally, you see, you would say, look, you can't learn very much, you better not come to my seminar or whatever. But he thought, well, we've got a kind of way in which some will learn and others might be able to learn from those who've half learned, sort of thing. He was able to teach in this way. And that's how it happened that he got into his school somebody whose understanding was extremely faulty. And this chap always asked irrelevant questions, and when people were set a tale to study, say he studied the wrong one, and all that kind of thing. So at long last, very reluctantly, this Sufi teacher told this man he must go. Terribly sorry, you must go. Not because he couldn't learn so much, but because of the adherence to the principle expressed in the ancient Persian saying, the presence of a dog does not improve a pool of rose water. He was getting in the way, in other words, and other people were learning from him how to behave in that particular way. Now, the student was naturally rather depressed, upset, but ultimately realizing that his teacher, or the teacher, wouldn't change his mind, he packed his few belongings and went on his way. 2 or 3 years later, this same Sufi was sitting at the entrance to his home when a magnificent, chauffeur-driven, custom-built limousine, gold-plated, upholstered in Persian carpets, silk, swept up to him. Out jumped the unsuccessful student, his hand outstretched, beaming joyously at the sight of his old master. "Oh, I'm glad to see that you've been successful in the world," said his master. "Am I to take it that you've at last given up the desire to learn from the teaching stories?" "Oh, yes," he said. "I took your advice to heart. You know, instead of studying them, I teach them now."
Stories from the Way of the Sufi by Idries Shah.
This too will pass. A powerful king, ruler of many domains, was in a position of such magnificence that wise men were his mere employees. And yet one day he felt himself confused and called the sages to him. He said, "I do not know the cause, but something impels me to seek a certain ring, one that will enable me to stabilize my state. I must have such a ring, and this ring must be one which, when I am unhappy, will make me joyful. At the same time, if I am happy and look upon it, I must be made sad." The wise men consulted one another and threw themselves into deep contemplation, and finally they came to a decision as to the character of this ring which would suit their king. The ring which they devised was one upon which was inscribed the legend, "This too will pass."